All right, 7th through 8th grade. So I need you to pause the video and make sure you have a pencil and paper to take notes, or a notebook, however you take notes for this class. If you don't take notes, today is the day you need to take notes. So go get a piece of paper and a pencil. It will be a little bit of a longer video, but the good news is the assignment from today will be due in 3 weeks. So you have 3 weeks to do today's assignment. This is the day we write the paper. So we're going to start off where we left off last week. We're going to look at our outline. I'm going to explain to you how to fill it out into some subpoints. Again, using our example of video games and using completely made up material. This is not a good outline for your research paper because I have not done research on this. I'm making this stuff up. But in your case, you will use your research and your material to create the subpoints. Do not make them up. Also, I want you to be encouraged. At this point in your research paper, most of the work is already done. You've laid the groundwork. I like to think of this as if you've ever driven past a construction of a house or a building, you notice that the first thing you start to see that resembles a house is this framework with no slats, no, I can't remember the name of it. Obviously, I'm not in construction, but anyway, you just see these open slats. It looks like a rib cage almost. And that is the framing of the building. And then eventually they build the walls and the roof, and then they put on shingles and brick and siding. But what you've done so far, the outline of your paper, is like the framework of a house. Or you could compare it to the skeleton of a body without the flesh and the organs and the skin wrapping it all together. But what you've constructed in your outline is so essential. On your outline hangs your whole paper. And it's very important to make sure that this is exactly how you want it before you proceed. Not that you can't change your outline after you've begun writing your paper. And you may have to tweak it, but this really needs to be pretty set in stone before you begin writing your paper. So let's review our outline, and I'm going to add in some subpoints because if I were writing a research paper, this outline is not going to get me through. I'm going to need a little bit more detail and a little bit more structure. This frame would be good for a 5-paragraph essay, but not for a full research paper. So I probably am going to have an A and a B at least. And so here I'm going to make up my A and B for 1, and I'm going to say it benefits playing video games. Probably should type this. Maybe I can do it like this. Okay. Next to my A, shrink it down. I'm probably going to make a mess here, but playing video games allows for physical exercise without risk of injury. That was one of the things we kind of talked about. And then for B, I'd put playing video games allows for physical exercise. Maybe we'll say with limited resources. You don't have to go to the gym. You don't have to have all this equipment, etc. Okay. So let's just say that's our A and B. Now, clearly those go under the physical exercise. They go in the physical exercise bucket. So it's almost like you have a gallon-sized bucket. Well, here's a half gallon and here's a half gallon. So they both fit neatly inside the gallon-sized bucket. So then for the second one, for our second A and B, for point 2, we might say playing video games benefits the player mentally. It, I'm going to say it allows for development of critical thinking. And then maybe my point B will be it exercises decision making and outcomes in hypothetical scenarios. Okay. Now, again, my outline is not going to look like this. If I'm doing this outline, it's going to be really neat. It's going to look like this. I'm going to have a I with my first point in a complete sentence. Then I'm going to have an A and my first subpoint with a B and my second subpoint. You guys know how to do outlines, I hope. And then I'll have my second point, etc. So you guys know how to do these outlines, but that's how I want it to look. It would be ideal if you had at least an A and a B under each one. You could do an A, B, and C under one, as long, again, as those subpoints are parallel to each other and balanced, okay? And one way to make sure is to keep the same sentence structure. So notice my A and B, video games. Playing video games allows for the physical exercise without risk of injury. Playing video games allows for physical exercise without limited resources. So you try to keep the same kind of sentence structure in there, and it helps you keep your categories parallel. All right, so I'm just going to move this stuff down here to neaten it up. Now, time to write your paper. All right, so this is your checklist. Are you ready? Hope you're still taking notes. So you have finalized your outline, you have subpoints, you have complete sentences for all of your points, including your thesis, and go ahead and type in your restated thesis as part of your outline at the end of your paper, okay? So now it's time to write your paper. Here's what we're going to do. First, we are going to follow the structure of our outline. So it's really important. I've seen people write really good outlines and then they just ignore it and write a paper. And it is just so disappointing. Put all this work into your outline and then you ignore it. The outline is the roadmap. It's the framework. It's so essential. Write the body first, then the intro and the conclusion, okay? So save your intro and conclusion for the end. That's where you put in some extra tidbits. You snatch your audience's attention. Something that might not fit neatly into a bucket, be a great place to put it in an intro or conclusion. The conclusion is the whole, you're wrapping it all together and presenting it with a bow. You're not rehashing leftovers, and we've talked about this. And we've talked about this in the 5th through 6th grade classes. So some of this stuff I'm covering, I'm assuming you've either gone through the 5th and 6th grade videos, or you have been my student along the way and have heard me say these things. But if I say anything that you do not know or do not remember, feel free to look through the 5th and 6th grade videos I have and find where these topics are covered for some instruction or refreshment. Okay. Aim to use at least 2 quotations, statistics, or paraphrases per subpoint. Now, I'm going to come back to this in a second. I'm going to put a star there. But this is a good goal to have. These are the kinds of things you say. You say your subpoint A, and then your very next sentence could be, for example, according to the New York Times, blah, blah, blah. Or the World Report cited this many, kids played video games in the year 2010, So this is a good play. The place you put it is inside the A and B buckets after the topic sentence. Pace yourself. Do a little bit each day. I recommend 1 paragraph. 1 paragraph a day should set you up to be done with this research paper on time. Now, let's look back at this outline. When you consider the fact that you'll have at least 1, maybe 2 or 3 introductory paragraphs. This is different from the 5-paragraph essay because sometimes it takes a little bit longer to give the background and the context of your research. No matter how many paragraphs you have in your introduction, the very last sentence of the last introductory paragraph is where your thesis still goes. It is the last sentence before you begin your body paragraph, okay? And then the first sentence of the next paragraph will be point 1. And then the very next sentence will be your A paragraph. So it will go 1A, and then you talk about it. So it would look like this. Intro paragraph, intro paragraph. The very last sentence is your thesis. The very first sentence will be sentence I. The very next sentence will be sentence IA. And then the next sentence will be your quotations, your statistics, your paraphrases. And then you start a new paragraph, and this will be IB. And that will be the first sentence, the topic sentence of that paragraph. And you talk about the statistics, the quotations, the paraphrases that apply to IB. Then the next paragraph will be point 2, and then point 2A. And then you talk about the statistics, paraphrases, summaries, quotations that support A. And then you have a new paragraph, and you have 2B as your topic sentence. And you talk about all the statistics and paraphrase that support B, 2B. Then the very next paragraph, topic sentence, is point 3. The next sentence will be point 3A. And then the rest of the paragraph will be statistics, paraphrases, quotations that support A. Then you have 3B as your topic sentence for the next paragraph. And you talk about all the statistics and paraphrases and citations, quotations that support 3B. And let's say for our third point, we actually have a C. So that will be the very next sentence of the next paragraph. And then you end with a restatement of your thesis and your concluding paragraph or paragraphs, okay? So altogether, at minimum, you should have, let's count our too far out. Let's count up our paragraphs, okay? We have, let's say at minimum, we have 1 intro paragraph. So 1, we're going to count them here on the side. 1 intro, 1A, 1B, 2A, 2B, 3A, 3B, 3C optional, and conclusion 1 or 2. So at minimum, you will have 8 paragraphs, although I do expect to be probably several more. Okay? Hopefully that helps you think about how to structure it. So when I say 1 paragraph a day, you're looking at, if you do 1 a week day, it taking you about 2 weeks to write, and then give yourself the 3rd week to polish, edit, check your citations, okay? And then, of course, when finished, edit your work before you turn in. What kinds of reminders do you need for this paper? All right, these are things I've told you before, or I've taught to my 5th and 6th grade group in their video series, so we're going to fly through them. Again, feel free to look back. Avoid passive voice sentence constructions. Very weak. The only time you need to use a passive voice is when you're intentionally trying to be ambiguous or when you're trying to defer responsibility. The lamp was broken by someone. We don't know who. No first or second person pronouns in this kind of formal writing. No I, you, we, our, my. They really sneak in when you're using them normally as possessive pronouns, our country, or we the people. Okay, so no first or second pronouns in research writing. You can always slack off depending on your audience and your specific writing in the future, but formal research writing, no first or second person. No cliches, jargon, idioms, or slang. If you're not sure, go look back at a video. But part of this falls under the larger admonition from me to keep your tone formal. Cliches, jargon, idioms, slang, they're all informal. They can be confusing, ambiguous, very unclear. Okay? Avoid contractions, also very informal. No, can't. We can't find out the bottom. We can't get to the bottom of this. Okay? We cannot, will not, no contractions. Avoid there are sentence constructions. Those are just weak. We have talked about them. Of course, remember for the thesis and the topic sentence, those need to be your strongest sentences with the subject of the paragraph as the subject of the sentence, the topic sentence. And with the thesis, the subject of the paper should be the subject of the thesis. You need a strong verb. Avoid standalone be verbs. Now, there may be times where you have to use a be verb, but I can tell you with a lot of good editing and very careful constructions, you can avoid a be verb in your entire paper, a standalone be verb. I know this for a fact. I've done it and I've helped students do it. So you can do it too. Do not use interrogative or exclamatory sentences. In short, no questions, no exclamations. We joke that when you use an exclamation point in writing, it's like laughing at your own jokes. It's just not considered formal academic. It's like yelling, and you don't yell in research. You might do that in persuasion, but not in research. And no questions, because that crosses a line into persuasion, because you're directly addressing your audience, which we're not doing in formal academic research writing. Avoid persuasive devices or logical fallacies, which is part of what I'm hinting at with the question marks. We will cover at the very end of the semester, after the research is done, we'll cover how to write persuasively. So if you haven't been with me and we haven't covered that yet, we will cover it, and you can look back over and make sure. But we're not persuading our audience. We're not moving them to action. We don't want them to do something. We just want them to look at our information and agree with us. So that is the goal of research writing. So no logical fallacies, no persuasive devices. And then lastly, no redundancies. We've also talked about this before. Again, you can go back and look at 5th and 6th grade videos. But we really want to avoid redundancy in writing. It makes for boring writing. We lose our audience, and it's diluted and less strong. So use this as your checklist for editing your research paper. So now I'm turning you loose. It's time to write your paper. It might seem daunting. And I like to think of it similar to my building construction analogy. Think of those dot-to-dot pictures you did when you were really young. And you could look at the dot-to-dot and you could already tell what the picture was. This is obviously a heart. Now your job, you've already have the shape. Your paper has already taken shape. You know what you're writing about. You know what the goal is, what the point is. Now you just have to sit down and connect the dots and fill in the picture. So just start with your first point and draw a line to your next point. And you keep following the line of logic through your paper. And if it's well outlined and well organized, this part will take time, but it should be easy. Okay? And then turn it into your parent, your teacher, send it to me. And I know you're going to do great. The best way to learn how to do this is just by doing it. So hope you do well in this, and I will see you next week for a short check-in video.